And welcome welcome to Round Table for such a time as this. Please give me thumbs up. Thumbs up. Let me know we're coming through loud and clear. We have with us tonight Abigail Ruth and Miss Vicki Wilson. Welcome.
Good evening, Pastor
Good
James.
evening.
Welcome. All right. Okay. With that said, the topic tonight, I got in that Tales from the Front, Christian Courage, a profile in Christian courage I put in there, right?
Yeah, that's fine. We're going to be talking about a case. It's actually dates back to 2009. Well, actually before that. So I'm going to run down this, but I just wanted to say the reason I want to start maybe covering some stories of Christians who are on the front line as an encouragement to us, so that we can see that God will be there. I mean, I've read a lot of stories, a lot of books over the years about persecuted Christians, and I found them actually to be very encouraging, because you see God really show up for His people. I mean, and we talk when we read scriptures about the fellowship of suffering. We don't usually hash that out in much detail, but we have brothers and sisters for whom that is an everyday reality, the fellowship of suffering with Him.
Yep.
Right.
And what does that look like? And given the fact that it seems as though, our country is just, shall we say, disintegrating at a record rate here, I think the future is going to be much more difficult than it has been in the past. And we need to prepare as much as we can. And I don't know about you, but the both of you, but my prayer life is much more consistent now than it used to be. We have actually a group here at church that fasts, because we know from the Bible that if you want to seek God's face, that's one way to do it. It's prayer. Well, two ways actually: prayer and fasting. And these things are important. And I think we need to get serious about these things before, something happens. And
Right.
even if everything continues on its merry way, life can be difficult, even under regular circumstances,
Right.
depending.
Yeah, and I agree with you that reading these true stories that are happening now, today, that we can relate to is, like you said, very encouraging, because these people are putting their faith really into action and relying on God fully. And He really does, like you said, He is absolutely showing up for these folks. It's incredible when you read the details and you see what these people are doing in these extremely difficult circumstances and how their faith is sustaining them. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
It really is.
Yeah, and maybe, just maybe, it can give us some sort of blueprint that we can use in this country if the need arises.
Sure. Yeah, and so this story came to my attention. I was aware of it because it started, way back in the early 2000s. And it's the story of Lisa Miller. And I'm just going to take a couple minutes here to explain it, because there are some details that people will need to know in order to follow along. But I think the person I really want to focus on tonight isn't Lisa Miller, but it's a guy by the name of Phil Zodhiates, but you will see. So let me begin. So in December of 2000, Lisa Miller and another young woman, Janet Jenkins, were in a lesbian relationship. They traveled from home in Virginia to Vermont to enter into a civil union, which was not legally recognized in Virginia. Remember, this is before, was it, Obergefell was in 2015? I think, yeah. Okay, so they're in a civil union. Lisa wanted to have a child, so she was artificially inseminated, and her daughter, Isabella, was born in 2002. Now, her partner, Janet Jenkins, declined to adopt Isabella. And in 2002, they moved from the couple with Lisa's child, moved from Virginia to Vermont. But in 2003, they broke up, and Lisa and Isabella, her daughter, moved back to Virginia. The civil union was dissolved, and after that, Janet saw Isabella only 3 times in 2003 and 2004. In the meantime, Lisa, and I'm not sure about the timing of this, but Lisa became... Now, I'm going to say Lisa became a Christian, but I want to explain something here. I did get, because she has been writing like journal entries and letters to keep people updated. She is quoting T.D. Jakes.
Uh-oh.
Yes. So, okay. So I just want to say I do not know the content of her beliefs.
Maybe she's young.
Well, this was, let's see, it says she became a Christian. This would have been around 2003, 2002, 2003, 2004. But,
okay.
So who knows? Yeah, maybe she is young in the faith. Maybe she doesn't know he's a modalist. But anyway, the story continues.
And when she became a Christian, then she moved away. She became a new person and moved away from the gay lifestyle.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually which order, because I read several articles on it, and I'm not sure which happened first.
Okay.
If they broke up and then she became a believer, or whatever she is, or the opposite. But anyway, in 2004, a Virginia judge officially recognized Lisa as Isabella's sole parent. Now remember, she is the biological mother.
Okay.
All right. Sole parent. According to published papers, Janet had expressed little interest in Isabella. And then at that point, Lisa decided not to allow Janet to have any further visits with Isabella. But Big Gay steps in because they have their own motivation. So
do we want to talk about why she didn't want Isabella to visit Janet anymore? Do we want to get into the details?
We are going to talk about that. Okay. But I think that this actually happened twice, because this is the first time where she just decided Janet does not... her child, and and now she believes, she's a Christian. She knows what God says about homosexuality. There are a lot of reasons not to want to turn your child over to your ex-lesbian lover, right?
Right. Who, like you said, had no interest in going and taking the steps to adopt her when they were still together. Never had a plan or a desire to make the relationship legal when she could have.
That's exactly right, which makes what happened after this even more unbelievable. But anyway, so the ACLU, along with Lambda Legal Defense and Lambda Legal Defense, wanted to nullify the Virginia Marriage Amendment and the Federal Defense of Marriage Act. So starting in 2007, these groups decided to fund a custody battle over Isabella in the courts of Virginia and Vermont. A Vermont judge ordered that Janet should be allowed unsupervised overnight visits with Isabella, even though at that time she had not even seen her for 2.5 years. And again, like we keep saying, Janet had not adopted her.
But what was the justification in that? Was there any justification?
Well, that was the Vermont judge that's now on the Supreme Court, right, Vicki?
Yeah, so this judge, you know how the other side, they love the first woman to do this, the first lesbian to do this, they're all about their first. Well, the judge, William Cohen, has since been appointed to the Vermont Supreme Court. And we'll get into, because of this landmark decision, where he grants parental rights to someone in a dissolved civil union, not even an existing civil union anymore, a dissolved civil union who is not the biological or adoptive parent. But, you know, that was a landmark. That was groundbreaking. So that's what this was about.
But what was the justification, though? That's what I'm asking. Did they give a reason?
Well, they wanted to. They had designs on against the Virginia laws at that point. This was before same-sex marriage was legalized.
No, I got you. That's both. But I'm still saying to award the ex.
Oh, what was the stated? I do
Yeah.
not know what the stated justification was.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's
I
to
can't
use
answer that.
children to further their agenda is what the actual reason was.
No, I got
but
that,
we
but-
don't know what they said their reason was.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. Okay, so Lisa then, now that the judge has ordered this, she initially complied. But Isabella started, now, it depends on who you read, but Lisa did report that Isabella started exhibiting signs of sexual abuse after these visits. Now, she was 5 years old. And I don't want to get graphic here, but I'll just say that Lisa said that Isabella had been crying at night, asking her to promise that she wouldn't have to take a bath or shower.
Oh
with
my
Janet.
goodness, that's it. Done.
And this woman was basically a stranger to this poor child. She hadn't seen
No,
her in
absolutely.
2.5 years, and she's sent over there and is told she has to get naked and get in a tub with this woman. And that there's more to it than that even.
Yes. But, so, yeah, it was not good. So now what do you do? Now this judge has ordered unsupervised visits, and your child is probably being sexually molested. At least that's what Lisa thought at this point.
Oh,
Her whole personality changed. She was an outgoing, happy child. She became withdrawn and crying and quiet
Oh, that's a
and
problem.
begging her mom not to send her back.
Oh, that's a problem.
So, not surprisingly, Lisa did what any good mother would do. She disobeyed the Vermont court. And she fought this all the way up to the Virginia Supreme Court, where in 2008 the court ruled in favor of continuing visitation rights for Janet. My goodness. Lisa still refused to comply. And in 2009, a judge warned that if she did not allow the visitations, he would transfer full custody of Isabella to Janet.
To a woman who refused to adopt her.
Right. And is potentially molesting her. Who has no physical relationship whatsoever, not even an adoption.
No physical relationship, no emotional attachment.
And you know what's when you all gave me this story, you know what was so shocking to me? That I had never heard it. I've never heard of
either.
it. Never heard of it.
I don't think they don't want to publish stories
But
like this.
I'm saying at least even in Christian outlets, I've been following Christian news. I mean, Christian outlets didn't have this.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was well aware of it in the when this was happening.
Were you?
I was, but then I was hooked into mass resistance and I don't know what all LifeSite.
LifeSite reported on it, they said. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it depends on who you follow. But of course the mainstream media isn't going to report this, or if they do, they're not going to give you the details.
Right.
All right. So at that point, Lisa decided to take Isabella and leave the country. So here's where it gets really interesting. 3 men helped her to get to Canada and escape to Nicaragua, and she lived there until recently when Isabella finally turned 18, and at that point, of course, there is no custody. So Lisa and Isabella turned themselves into the U.S. Embassy in Nicaragua because now Lisa doesn't have to worry that Janet can get.
She's an adult and she won't be forced to go.
Exactly.
Okay.
But the 3 men who helped her have faced consequences. Pastor Kenneth Miller, who is an Amish Mennonite pastor, served 2 years in prison. He helped her to come up with a plan and found missionaries that Lisa and Isabella could stay with in Nicaragua. Now, Timothy Miller, and I'm not sure if he is the son or any relation, he is also an Amish Mennonite, bought the plane tickets for Lisa and Isabella. He was sentenced to time served and parole after spending 8 months in custody. And the one I wanted to more focus on tonight was businessman Philip, and I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but I'll say it anyway, Zodhiates, was sentenced to 3 years in prison for driving Lisa and Isabella to Buffalo, New York.
He drove them to the airport.
He just drove them to the border. He didn't even drive them to the,
He gave them a ride.
That's
and
exactly right.
And they sent him to prison for that.
For kidnapping.
It's unbelievable.
They sent him to prison for kidnapping, and she, at that point, had sole custody. There were no travel restrictions.
Right.
So she wasn't even breaking the law.
There was no law. There were no laws broken.
That's what I'm saying. I'm still confused, as I'm sure our listeners are confused. What was at least the pretext of this foolishness?
So Phil Zodhiates was charged with international parental kidnapping and conspiracy.
And who did he kidnap the child from?
I don't know.
The lesbian lover who has no custody and no biological. You know what? It just.
And no emotional attachment to the child.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know
it's
why this continues to boggle my mind. Just the pure evil in all of this. Mm-hmm. But you know what? As Christians, we're going to be called to do this, and I just want to take. I mean, at some point, as I'm reading the story, Christians, we're going to be faced with things like this, an open defiance of the government for the greater good, and in some cases to protect our children. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and the court system has been broken for a long time, and it's getting worse by the day. And there isn't even we can't even necessarily expect a fair trial of any sort. I mean, this happened he was sentenced finally in 2017 to 3 years. He's supposed to get out at the end of this year. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was a kangaroo court, and the courts have become so politicized. And I want to say too, I remember we went to a banquet. Gosh, it had to be, I don't know, 12 years ago, something like that. You and I, Pastor James, it was for Alliance Defending Freedom. And I asked them, there was a question and answer, and I asked them about the teaching of natural law, which, natural law is basically right and wrong. Mm-hmm. In the legal schools. Am I saying that right? The legal schools?
The law schools.
The law schools. I knew there was something that didn't sound right about that.
Yeah, it still don't sound right about it.
Well, and he said no. He said
schools.
maybe. I think he said maybe Notre Dame at that point would still at least bring it up.
Natural law.
Yes, but it isn't even a thing anymore. And now we have this other.
I think I was there too at that. Now that
were you?
It's coming back. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jeff something. Was it the Maggianos? Maggianos, yeah.
Oh,
his name was Jeff
I didn't
something.
remember that much,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I
so
do remember you asking that. Yep.
Oh, you remember her asking that?
Mm-hmm. Now that you're talking about it.
Really?
Yeah, and talking about the law schools.
I don't even know if I knew you then.
I know.
Oh, oh my gosh, that's a small world. Anyway, and so with this now, critical race theory has hit the law schools, and I can't think of the name of the. I mean, it's gotten so far off. It's gotten so far away from justice that, I think we're in deep trouble. Anyway, so as far as Phil Zodhiates goes, he was charged with international parental kidnapping and conspiracy. There was a 2-week jury trial. It was largely a sham. The Obama Department of Justice stepped in. Vicki, you know a lot about the Obama DOJ, but we won't talk about that tonight.
That's another story. Yep.
They got the jury trial moved from conservative Lynchburg, Virginia, where Lisa and Isabella lived, to liberal Buffalo, New York, because that was the drop-off point at the end of the ride. Go
How
figure.
Convenient that that's where they could do the trial.
I just posted the 2 stories that we have up on our Facebook page. If anyone wants to go there and read about it.
Okay, let's see, just a couple more details. So at this point in time, Virginia's Defense of Marriage Amendment forbade the Virginia courts from recognizing the Vermont Civil Union. Isabella's Virginia birth certificate listed Lisa as her only parent, and Lisa lived in Virginia when Isabella was born. The trial was largely focused on ad hominem attack, not points of law. For instance, the Southern Poverty Law Center, which a lot of you probably know something about, helped introduce evidence that Zodhiates was a horrible Christian bigot.
Oh, of course.
But the judge refused to allow evidence of Zodhiates' philanthropy and charitable work. He was a Christian businessman before this.
Sounds like a really great impartial judge.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. And the jury never heard any evidence of the sexual abuse.
What?
Yes. And in fact, the fear of sexual abuse is a legal defense for alleged parental kidnapping as well. So by any normal measure, Phil Zodhiates committed no crime. But the massive DOJ, SPLC, and LGBT legal teams were too overwhelming, and he was convicted. Let's see. He's now hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt for legal fees and lost income. And it is likely that the Southern Poverty Law Center will bankroll a further lawsuit against him on behalf of Janet for quote-unquote damages.
Right, yeah, I read that she's already filed civil lawsuits against
Oh, my gosh.
against Lisa and the men.
It's like, wow.
It just continues. It's just, again, this is not about the child.
No.
This was never about the child. Never about what's best for the child.
Yeah, you know
Never
what?
about being a mom to this child. It was purely persecution and pushing a political agenda.
You know, Meg asked a good question. Who were the rotten lawyers of the defense? I'm sorry, she didn't say rotten. I said, who were the lawyers for the defense?
Actually, I did read in more than one article that, they realize now that the lawyers were really slanted for all three cases of all
Stinky.
three men. Yeah, they were
Stinky.
pretty bad.
Horrible.
And,
worthless.
yes, and the LGBT juggernaut has so much power that people are afraid to stand against him.
You can have
Even
great
lawyers.
lawyers like Alliance Defending Freedom and still have a horrible judge that never listens to the evidence. Trust me, been there.
Exactly. And finally, to add insult to injury, in December 2019, Zodhiates filed a petition for pardon to President Trump.
Oh.
Let me continue. It appears that no one who got pardoned had committed, Trump actually pardoned had committed a transgression against the LGBT movement.
Right.
So there's that.
Oh.
Yeah.
What are you trying to say, Abby?
That is
What
one of
are you
Trump's
trying to say?
huge blind spots. Huge. And it was throughout his tenure as president, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh.
Or the right people, they didn't give him the full story. Who knows? Yeah, I was disappointed when I read that.
But
But
that nobody.
You sure you haven't? Did they have people advocating for his pardon? You sure Trump heard about it? in
That's the
fairness to Trump?
question.
I
right?
did
That's
read
the
that he
question.
heard about it.
Oh, you did
actually.
read that he heard about it, and
Yeah.
he said
Okay.
no.
Yeah. Well, it went through Paula White. Okay, the look on your face, Pastor James. Our listeners can't see it, but
And this was also halfway through his presidency. Don't a lot of the pardons happen at the end? I don't know.
Usually.
This was 2018.
Usually.
but yeah, he could have done it. I mean, he
No,
did
he
a whole
definitely
bunch
could
at
have
the,
done
at
it.
the end.
Correct. I sure wish he would have.
Oh my. So I guess the question is, what would you do? Did they do anything wrong? What would you have done? To what lengths would you have gone to save your child if in a similar situation? Any of you ladies want to go first? What would you do?
I'd leave. I'd do what she did.
Yep.
But I think the men are even more remarkable. That they, although, I mean, I don't know if they knew that this would be because who could have predicted that they would be charged with kidnapping.
For giving a ride.
Exactly. But I think their situation is even, because a mother is a mother. I keep thinking of, King Solomon, when the
right.
two prostitutes come and
right.
one baby has died.
He
And
knew the mother would reveal herself.
And she did. And that's what a mother would do.
Yep, no question.
But these guys, and it's not going to be over when Phil gets out at the end of the year, because they've got a civil lawsuit already going to just completely destroy him.
Mm-hmm.
And let me say,
who's doing it? My question is, we you know what, we've got to do what is the, other than pure evil, what is the motivation? What could possibly be the motivation for this other than pure evil? And my thing is, if it's such pure evil, you should light should be shined on this. I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
There should be light shined on this. This is
But
pure evil.
how much light gets shined on the evils of the LGBT rights movement? We could.
Right.
I know where
Right.
to go find that information, but most people are unaware of it. Like I said, Life Site, Mass Resistance. Now some other, but they're all conservative, and obviously we're all getting censored
Right.
and
Right.
canceled. So it's going to be even less now. But here's the thing. So Phil Zodhiates is sitting in prison, and he's been there since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And he has written a journal. He has like a journal entry most every day since then of his time in prison. And it is remarkable. And I have actually, we have it, there's a link for it in the description of the video. He is witnessing. God has placed him, multiple people. There are Christians. I'm reading, the day he got there, his roommate was a Christian.
Right. It really shows God is in the details.
And
God
he's in
is watching
prison.
over him from
God
the
is
day
in
one.
prison.
Yeah.
It was like, wow. It made me. And then he's talking, and people showed up. He didn't know the ropes, for instance, and he didn't have any money. I forget how, because you don't know what's going to happen to you when you're being inducted
Right.
into prison. So his money was in the pants that got left. Anyway, and all these guys showed up and gave him what he needed.
Yep. Toothbrush, toothpaste. And they said, this is how we tithe. You don't
Right.
even have to pay us back. This is how we tithe.
You mean
we
people
make
in
sure
prison?
the new
Christian,
people have
yes,
what they
prisoners.
need. Because he couldn't buy any of the stuff from the commissary yet.
Why not?
Right.
Because he didn't have money in his account
Okay,
yet.
gotcha.
Exactly. And so he's been doing Bible studies, because he's actually he's pretty well versed in the Bible, and I get the impression that a lot of these guys, well, there are guys that are getting saved too, but they're new, they're not Bible scholars. They became, going to prison was the impetus to become a Christian, and so he's like the resident sort of Bible scholar.
Right.
And they said, I have been praying. I forget, one of them said, I have been praying for someone to come teach me.
Well, don't pray for me that way.
Pastor James. Not that anybody wants to go to prison, but I have been so impressed, and the way God has protected him there and given him meaningful. And that doesn't always happen, because we know stories where the poor people, like, there's nothing in their lives that seems meaningful at all. But in this situation, he
had multiple opportunities to talk to people. People would come up to him and say, "Why are you different? What is it about?" They just knew something was different about him. And this was a minimum security prison, right? And they said 40 to 45% of the people in there were sexual offenders.
Right.
And they were really hated by the other prisoners. really hated. And so since he was charged with kidnapping, some of them originally thought he was a sexual offender. So he had to get paperwork and whatnot to show that, no, I didn't do anything to a child.
I was protecting one.
So it was really interesting. I mean, this diary was very interesting. I only started reading it a couple days ago, so I haven't gotten through it all. But it's hard to stop reading because it's so interesting how God was really in the details and really used him in this really difficult time in his life.
Do you know one of the things? Because when I worked in the hospital on the psychiatric unit, one of the populations I used to have a lot of contact with were people who did hard time, who did prison, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I did not know, and I'm sure people have heard it, I did hear about it, but it was confirmed that you don't tell people in prison that you were there for molestation of a child.
Right.
They will kill you.
They will kill you. Yep.
Yeah.
And I asked specifically why, and he said because so many of them were abused as children.
Right.
Mm.
And they hate child abusers, child molesters. And so you actually you can't put them in population. And even that, it just shows you that I don't know, the abuse of a child, even amongst bank robbers and murderers.
Right.
They have a
They have a
code.
They have a code.
And that's why he thought it was strange that there were so many sexual offenders in this minimum security prison. But they said because that is where they put him, because if they put him in medium security, they would, if they put him with violent offenders, they would be killed like immediately.
Yeah.
So they put him with the nonviolent offenders.
Yeah. So it seems like even I don't know if you want to say it, God who is sovereign over all, just the disdain he has for those who abuse children. Now, we just came out of prayer talking about the sovereignty of God. Everybody involved, from caseworkers to judges to guards, that did this and was party to this because this man was helping out a child who was escaping molestation. Oh, God is going to have a say in this ultimately. He is going to have a say on this, and people are they're going to pay for it. They're going to pay for this. But I think Christians are going to, in the coming days, as bad as this is, we're going to have to make some decisions. Now I'm assuming that these three guys knew, but I still don't understand it. They knew she was fleeing a court order,
Right.
with this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's nothing. I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I know you would.
But I think we are going to have, Christians are going to have to make some decisions. And don't look now, but I think we've made some already in this year, to defy edicts from governors.
Yeah.
Yep.
To defy edicts from even municipalities.
So we answer to a higher power.
We answer to a higher power, and
that takes trust. And that's what faith really is.
Yeah.
It's trust.
Yep.
But
yeah.
let me say, too, one of the other things that really struck me in reading, and it sounds like you read even more than I did, Vicki, but the absence of bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any bitterness at all in any of the journal entries that I read.
That is he's a better man than me.
He was in the Word every single day,
Yeah,
praying every single day, and he said, it was just, and how he talked to this person and how he started a conversation with, it was just,
This is where God has me.
Where is this guy? Like, you'd think he was, you know,
Yeah.
just living his normal life. You could almost, no, he's in prison. And he didn't complain much about the food or any, he's just like, it wasn't great. Or, you're right. No bitterness. Just, wow.
Yeah, it's frustration at times, especially his wife was having, because he's married. and has kids. And his wife was going through, this was obviously very difficult for her.
Sure.
And so when it was difficult for her,
Sure,
that's when
sure.
it was hard on him. But otherwise, no anger, no bitterness. And I just think about how angry I get even if I turn on the radio these days.
I know.
And I'm like, oh man, I have such a long way to go.
So there's two people now ask, where can they find this diary?
There's a link at down below. I don't know if it's up there right
It's
now,
not up there
but
now.
it will.
We're going to put the link.
Okay, it will be.
It's Romans 8, and that's 8 spelled out. So it's ROMANSEIGHT, and then the numbers 28.com.
Gotcha. I've got day 4. You had day 4, Abby, in your thing, right? In the email you sent out?
I gave you. Let's see. Well, I
So-
sent you just a few excerpts. I don't know what day.
So
what
there it
day
is. I
was,
just sent
but-
out day 4 right there. You can click on that one. We're going to put it in the description after this, but that should get you to it right there.
Yeah, you have access if you just search whatever day you want.
I
you
just
can
put it
find
up there.
from there.
They should have that. I just put it up there because I have it pulled up here. Is day 4. Letters from prison. The Daily Journal. Philip. What's that?
Zodhiates.
Zodhiates.
I think, but I really don't know. I'm just making that up because
Okay.
it looks right. But I want to, if I can, just before we finish up here, I just want to read a little bit from one of his entries. This is more recent letter that he's written. He said, "The Lord quietly spoke to me that my time here in prison is serving his purpose. He has ordained me for this. It is a privilege and a calling, and one in which I feel totally unqualified.
Good man.
Yet here I am, and there is a clear message I am to proclaim to the church in this nation. The time is upon us when the sheep will be separated from the goats. The tares will be separated from the wheat and will be burned up in the eternal fire. It is time to get off the fence and determine who we shall serve, no matter the consequences. For those who choose the Lord God, suffering will no doubt ensue, great persecution and even imprisonment. Yet we are to rejoice to be so called, for God has a special purpose in this. It is all part of his divine plan. We are his instrument in sparking revival even in the darkest places. We are called to be his light even in the bleakest of dungeons, but we are not to fear, for he is with us wherever we are called of him to go. There are many waiting for you and watching for you to see what you will do. The choice is now yours."
It's a good man.
Yep.
Yeah, amen.
That's
He
a good man.
finishes by "no more wavering!" Exclamation. That's his last line of that. I know. It's just like God must do a supernatural work because I know I'm going to need one.
Me too.
Yeah. That's a yeah. I don't know about me in prison ministries. Me visiting, not taking up resident, but you asked for the grace. And again, what lengths are we willing to go through? And again, this wasn't a niece. This wasn't his daughter.
No, it
This
wasn't.
was someone else's child. And while she's living in South America, they're fighting, but they just went to jail just recently.
He
right?
went to jail in 2018.
Christmas,
The other ones
end of
had gone
2018.
earlier. I don't know what took so long for them to go after him. And now she is in jail. Lisa Miller is sitting in jail now, awaiting trial.
We got to shine a spotlight on that trial.
Yeah.
Where's she, in New York?
Yes, she
she's-
is. Niagara
Oh, okay.
County Correction. Niagara County Corrections. Yes. Uh-huh.
See, that just gets me too angry. I just...
Yeah, I don't understand how you send somebody to prison because they were trying to protect their child from
Yeah.
being abused.
And did they deal with?
No, the allegations of abuse were never dealt with. They were never introduced
Sorry, I'm doing it.
into the trial. So
Yeah, there's
yes.
a sworn affidavit you can read.
They're trying now. He is trying to get that because again his legal representation was so poor. He's trying to get it looked at because that is actually an allowable defense. and it was never introduced by his
Did he
lawyers.
get a jury trial?
Yes.
The jury convicted him?
Yes, but they weren't allowed to hear they were allowed to hear what a terrible bigot he was.
Right.
They weren't allowed to hear about the fact that he thought that Isabella was being abused. That was kept out. So it
No,
was
I'm not
just
hearing
it was a
It was
mistrial.
all one-sided. You didn't get both sides of the story. They got one side.
Even so, you don't turn the
Even so, like the
it's
one side
crazy,
even didn't
okay?
even show that any laws were broken. So it's,
I don't understand how you go to prison and you don't show that any laws were broken.
I know.
I don't understand that. But I'll tell you one thing. I don't know, man. It's just, maybe just because I don't trust people. Put me on the stand. I want to go there in my own defense. And then you put me on the stand. She was being abused. She was being abused. You can't unhear it. You can't unhear that once you do it. Well, hang trial. Let's start over again. Let's do no trial then. Let's do no trial. Hold me in contempt of court. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
But
in retrospect, I mean,
Yeah, in
and I'm sure
retrospect.
he'd never been had a trial
Right, he was
before.
probably
You don't
trying
even
to
know what's
follow the rules.
thinking. Well, my
ain't
lawyer
following those
knows
rules.
best, and
I'm not following those rules. I can't even introduce the fact that this little girl was being abused. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I do. And that's your
Alright.
legal counsel, giving you the advice. So hey,
Who's paying them? That's unbelievable. But again, this is we're called to die on the hill of truth. And sometimes that comes with a cost. It comes with a cost. So any parting this makes you it leaves me with a bunch of questions. Any last words, Abby, Vicki?
no, I think my last words were probably should have ended with what I just read of his
Those
Yeah.
are good words.
his journal. But yeah, I would recommend
Yeah.
that people go there and read Romans 8:28. It is remarkable, and it's encouraging that the Lord somehow he can still make it worthwhile, feel worthwhile, even in the moment, like it
Yeah.
doesn't, as hard as it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, he said a couple of things I wrote down. He said was that through this experience, God is setting up divine appointments, because he was just, like I said, meeting all these new people and having deep conversations with them. And he said God uses trying times to mature us, and that he was fully trusting God has a plan and a purpose. And also he mentioned how important it is to memorize scripture, because there are times, like in the very beginning, for I don't remember how many days, it wasn't too long, but he didn't have a Bible at first, and so it's really important to have scriptures committed to memory. But the other thing too is just when you stand up to this radical agenda,
Yes.
because they do not want to coexist. They
No.
don't. If you don't agree, they will come after you, and they will punish you, and they will not
Yes.
stop.
They will not stop. And you know what? I was talking to someone before. I'm old enough I remember the progression. Do you remember the progression? The homosexual community simply said, we don't want to be
Bullied.
bullied. We don't want to be abused.
Oh, boy.
And I remember scratching my head saying, where are all these stories that have been getting bullied? I don't remember them
Yeah.
being bullied. Now, you would get one here and there, but it's sort of like this Black Lives Matters here. You know, two
Right.
black guys died. Now, every black man is in danger in the United States. So you hit the one or the two here. And then it went to, from we don't want to be bullied to we want to be accepted. Okay, you can come out in the open now. And then it became, we want to serve in the military openly. Remember that? And they started pushing it. Clinton said, no, don't ask, don't tell. And then it was like we're being deprived of being equals because we can't have our relations, our loving relationships affirmed. So we want civil unions. Then they got civil unions. Now they said, now we want marriage. See, civil unions is not the same thing as marriage. Even though civil unions gave you everything that a marriage gave you legally. But no, it's the word, marriage. They wanted marriage. So then the LGBT community got marriage.
They wanted legitimization.
Legitimization, marriage. And now that they have Obergefell in 2015, now it's gone from we want to be equal to we want you to shut up.
We want you to, not exist.
You not only have to tolerate us, you have to affirm us.
Right. No Christian businessmen allowed.
No Christian businessmen allowed. You have to affirm us. You have to say we are good and don't give me not in the sight of God thing. Otherwise, we will bury you. And
you have to give up your rights.
So it's
not about equal rights.
Not about equal rights. So it went from we don't want to be bullied to we're bullying you now.
100%.
Let me just say though, because I don't know why, maybe I'm just strange, but this is something I've been watching closely since I became a believer in 2000. And I don't know why this particular issue, but I could see from that very point, I'm like, oh, these people this is vicious, and these people, they're not about tolerance. I mean, it was very clear to me that they were totalitarian, even way back in the early 2000s.
I couldn't see it.
But you probably weren't watching it as closely as I. And I was reading, and I was reading comments and on various stories and stuff, and it was clear. But it wasn't unless you're looking at it. And again, I'm not sure why it caught my attention, but I knew it, which was why it worried me so very much. And then you had all the corporations jumping on the bandwagon, all the corporations in the gay pride parade, and the police department and the fire department, and the legitimization of it. And it was just alarming. So I'm like, and there was no stopping it. It was like a train. It was a locomotive. And I'm like, and in the schools, and it was just more, I'm like, we're in deep trouble. This is going to a very bad place.
We are far past the legitimization of it. It's to the delegitimizing their opponents. And let me be clear. We're not talking about the person who's in the corner struggling with homosexuality. No. We're talking about the movement that is seeking to destroy Christianity and the sexual standards of the scriptures. That movement, I will say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is evil. I am not talking about the person who is engaging in the act, even though it's sin and it's wrong, and the person who's engaging in that and wants to just go off by themselves and live their lives. No, I'm talking about the members of the LGBTQ plus whatever community that is seeking to destroy Christianity. That movement.
And children's lives.
And
the
nuclear family.
And
heteronormativity. Just read the old BLM.
And the First Amendment.
The ones who dress up and read stories in libraries. I'm sorry. Men who dress up as women and read.
They do more than read stories.
They do more than read stories. That movement, that's evil. Yes. That is evil. That's an abomination.
The sexualization of young children.
Sexualization. Yeah, if you're confused about your sexuality, you've got to at least admit that you being a man dressing up as a woman in a skirt, don't bring that to children. But they want to. I would even say this: heterosexual couples, don't be going to the libraries talking about your heterosexuality and libraries to kids. Don't do that. But they do it. There's no shame. There's no line. They do it, and that is evil. That is what I'm talking about. That is evil.
Because if you speak out against it, even though it's not because they're lesbian or gay, it's just that we don't want kids to hear about sex before it's, developmentally appropriate, because it messes them up. You're called a bigot and a homophobe and every other phobe.
And so that is evil, and we will never back down on that. So let me end with this. God is still sovereign. God is still in control. And in his control, whether he's bringing judgment or maybe we get a respite, I'm not sure. I'm leaning toward the first one. But regardless, God is in control. We Christians, we have to use the tools that we have, and that is the sword of truth. That God is the only one that's going to stop this. The decadence and the evil, that train has left the station, and it's picking up steam. I mean, this story right here is proof of it. We've got to follow this story, but we have to use God's truth on this battlefield. We have to. With that said, we thank you. God bless, and see you later.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
For such a time as this. For such a time as this.